All right, we need to have an important discussion tonight about what's going to happen in Europe. Now, a lot of people think that because the Netherlands didn't vote in a populist leader, and the same way with France, that France didn't vote in Marine Le Pen. They think that the whole situation's over, and they think everything's fine. They think everything will continue with Greece practically forever, and that Greece will continue on like it is. Nothing could be further from the truth. You ever heard something called extend and pretend? Basically, first off, I'm going to go into extend and pretend, but first I got to bring you up to date on how banks create money. And this is important in this situation because this applies to the reason why the European economy is eventually going to collapse and carry the world down if the world doesn't collapse and carry Europe down. It's which goes first, the chicken or the egg. In this case, I don't think that Europe has much time left, and they're giving the impression like they'll be able to go on with this forever. But I'm going to explain to you why I don't think Europe has much time left. And after I'm done explaining it, and maybe you'll agree with me that Europe is on the precipice now of going down, and they're keeping this information from us. They don't want us to know this because it would cause widespread panic if they knew what I'm going to tell you. Now, first off, you have to understand how banks create money and how banks lend money. First off, for a bank just can't create money out of nothing. They have to create money through a process that's called fractional reserve banking. So what that means is basically they have to have a fraction of real money that they hold back to create the money with, that they create from nothing. And basically they create it from nothing because it's just they just write it on their books, the money that they just created. So you picture that you go in for a loan to the bank, and you picture that they're going to actually have this money that they're going to lend you, that they're going to go into the vault and they're going to grab a big wad of bills and they're going to bring that out, and that's the money that they're going to lend you, that they already have that money. Nothing can be further from the truth. The real fact is all they do is very simple. You say you want to borrow $30,000. They just go in and write, they don't even write it anymore. They just type it into their computer that you owe $30,000. And now you owe the $30,000 to the bank. The bank just created that money from just basically nothing. Now you got to pay it back. The money that they created from nothing. Now, they have to have a couple things for that to happen in place. Number one, they have to have people that are credit worthy to lend to, that they know they're going to get their money back from. That's one thing that they have to have. Two, they can only create money if they're lending money out. They just can't abstractly go and say, okay, we want another $1 million for our bank today, and just write it on the books, $1 million for themselves. They can't do that. They have to lend money out. That's how they create money. And now, once they create that money and they put it on the books, now you've borrowed $30,000 and they've created it and put it on the books, they count that as a credit to the bank. That means that bank just suddenly got $30,000, actually more, because they'll count the interest that you're going to pay them back as well. So say you're going to pay back $10,000 interest, they'll count $40,000 extra dollars as a credit to their bank. In other words, they have now on their books, the bank shows that that bank is $40,000 richer, even though they don't have that money that they just lent you. That's how it works. Now, all's well and good as long as you're paying them back. But now let's say that you decide you're not going to pay them back. Now what's happened is that's called a non-performing loan. You didn't pay them back. Now all of a sudden, that when you come into the bank, you march in and say, I'm never paying you that money back. They are beyond disappointed. Because what they have to do is, instead of having that now at that $40,000 as a credit to their bank, Now they have to write that off when you make it official. Only when you make it official and you say, I'm never paying you back and you're never going to get your money, blah, 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 and you go bankrupt. Then it becomes official, and they have to go into the bank, and they have to take that $40,000, and they have to take it off of their credit to the bank, and then that money still exists, so, see? Now that they've created it, that $40,000. Now, all of a sudden, it becomes a deficit to the bank. The bank owes that money, not you, that they created. Now, the bank would have been better off if they'd never created that money because it wouldn't be a debt to the bank. Now, all of a sudden, that money's a debt to the bank. Somebody has to pay it back now that it's created. You see? Now, let's apply this to Greece. Pretend Greece is the $30,000 borrower from the bank. Except in Greece's case, it's $220 billion. Okay? Now, all these banks over the years now, because Greece has never made it official, Greece has never come up and said, okay, we're never paying that money back and we're bankrupt, and we make it official that we're not paying that money back. So all these years now, all these banks, these central banks, have been able to keep that, not only that money that Greece owes as a credit to their banks, but they've been able to keep the interest that Greece is going to pay into the future as a credit to their banks. What were to happen if Greece were to make it official and say, okay, you're never getting that money back? All these banks would then have to go in and say, uh-oh, we've got to write that off as a credit, and we also have to write the interest we wrote as a credit off. And now, all of a sudden, that's a debt to us, not to Greece. See, right now, the money's a debt to Greece because Greece is paying it off. But if they switch it around the other way, if Greece were to go bankrupt and make it official, we're bankrupt, for real, then all of a sudden, that money would go back on the creditors as a debt to them. Now, what they've done is these creditors over the years have extended themselves and extended themselves and extended themselves. Now we're back talking about the extend and pretend. They have extended credit and extended credit and extended credit to the point where they cannot actually, they're reaching the limit of what they can actually do. And they're caught in a quandary right now. And the quandary is they're caught in a catch-22. If they don't lend Greece the money, Greece will go down. And if Greece goes down, suddenly the credits that are on all their books turn into a debt on all their books, and there's nobody that's going to bail them out now because they're the guys that bail other people out. Right? This would start a cascading collapse, is what it would start. The $220 billion that Greece owes. Because none of them have enough money to cover that. Not even the ECB. They can't cover it because it doesn't come under their tool of money creation. They cannot create the money to do that. Even their economic stimulus can't cover it. And the reason why it can't cover it is they have to buy the bonds. And this would crash the bond market on them. They can't do it. They can't come up with that money. So they have to keep extending loans to Greece. They'll have to give Greece another $7 billion so that Greece can hand the $7 billion back to them again. So Greece is basically paying nothing. But they're extending that to Greece. Now, why this is such a tricky situation is they're reaching the end of their rope with this, where they can't extend to Greece any further. It's becoming obvious that everything is lost. Now, Greece is a trigger to a much bigger gun. And I'll explain to you why. Let's take a look at a few of these things in charts and stuff. Now, first, let's take a look at this article. No bailout funds for Greece, as EUROZONE finance chiefs failed to agree on a deal. Now, this is the latest news from only a matter of hours ago, like 15 hours ago. This is the latest news. The IMF and the EUROZONE states they failed to bridge the divide over Greece's debt relief, raising prospect of a summer crisis for the single currency if Athens misses a repayment. See, they're reaching the limit of what they can do with Greece. The Eurozone finance ministers have failed to agree on a debt relief plan for Greece, raising the prospect of a summer crisis for the single currency bloc if Athens misses a loan repayment. A meeting of the Eurozone's 19 finance ministers broke up late on Monday night amid a row with the International Monetary Fund about Greece's debt burden. The standoff came just hours after Greece and Germany pledged to deep cooperation in the single currency and seize Brexit opportunities for the banking industry. After more than 8 hours of talks in Brussels, Greece's creditors, the Eurozone member states, and the IMF were unable to bridge their differences on Greece's ability to repay its debts in the long run. So the rubber's starting to hit the road. Now, why I say Greece is a trigger for a much larger gun, let's move over to an article here from Spain. It says Spain's economy is hanging by a thread as the Prime Minister begs for rivals to approve a budget. So, Spain's economy could unravel as the Prime Minister attempts to shore up support for the 2017 budget, a quarter of a year in. Okay? So Spain is in trouble. Now let's move over to Italy. Why Italy's economy is about to collapse. A contracted economy, inadequate banking system, engorged public sector, and festering corruption means that Italy is facing a troubled future. So, what are we looking at here? We're looking at Spain with no money. Now, the only real money that they've got right now is money that they're counting on Greece paying them back for money they lent Greece, and they're counting that as a credit on their books. Spain is. Italy is doing the same thing. Let me show you how much money Spain and Italy are owed by Greece. Let's go to this chart here. It says these are the countries that Greece is most indebted. Spain has got a large sliver here. It's billions and billions and billions. Italy, another large sliver. Billions and billions and billions. It's like 30, 40 billion or something huge like that for both countries, Spain and Italy, on this chart. And the money is counted as a credit that Greece owes them. They don't have to have that money back to count it as a credit. They count it as a credit on their bank books. They count also the interest. They've already counted the interest as a credit on their bank books. They count that money as them having it, just like it's in their pocket, just as if it's been paid back to them. Even though there's no hope in hell they're ever going to have that money actually in reality, they can count it as a credit. As long as Greece doesn't say, oh, that's it, we're never paying it back, we're bankrupt, then at that moment, that money ceases to be a credit on Italy and Spain's books. Now, what did I just read you about the Spain economy and the Italian economy? They can't afford to lose that $40 billion or $50 billion that Greece owes both of them. About $40 or $50 billion each. There's no place that they can go to actually get that money to make up for that money that's a credit on their books if it turns into a debt suddenly, if Greece goes down. So this is why I say Greece is a trigger for a much larger gun. Because if you pull the trigger and then the bullet's going to go down the chamber, and it's going to not just catch Greece, it's going to catch Spain, and it's going to catch Italy. And if it catches Spain and it catches Italy, France is next. Germany can't cope with all that. Even though they're savers and stuff, they've been slowly losing ground over the past while. And they can't cope with having to try to bail out Spain, Italy, and France. Germany just can't come up with that kind of money. The whole Eurozone will collapse. Ultimately collapse. And if the Eurozone collapses, it'll collapse the rest of the world's economy. And this is what we're facing right here. And the trigger could be Greece. Greece could ultimately be the trigger for this. And this is something that I'm watching very carefully. I haven't forgotten about Greece. A lot of other people, because this has been in the news, and it's been in the news, and it's been in the news, people have said to themselves, oh, nothing will ever happen with Greece because it's been in the news for years now. And they just keep bailing them out, bailing them out, bailing them out. And they think nothing will ever happen. That's the point when you get to the point where they just can't do it anymore. all of a sudden, boom, and it does happen. Just when you're least expecting it. So thank you very much for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next article. Bye.